One of the major ways that we make sense of the world is through our thoughts and emotions, and we relate to the people around us by communicating with them, obviously. Can you imagine a world where all our thoughts lock inside our heads? No one can hear or see us, and we cannot speak to anyone at all. If that thought is strange to you, then how about a world where we can communicate with each other as we normally do, but all our thoughts, even stray thoughts and half formed thoughts, all are stored at a faraway place where they can be accessed by total strangers? That seems equally strange and frankly scary to me. But that seems to be the state of the apps that we use to manage our thoughts and life, personal knowledge management or PKM apps. This is easily explained by giving the example of two very popular knowledge management apps. On the one hand, we have apps like Obsidian that store our data locally, free for individual and non commercial use, but have no built in sync feature. And I know that Obsidian has sync and publish add ons, but the sync feature works by storing our data at a server, which takes away the private data storage nature of Obsidian. And also, because the data for sync is stored at servers and servers need to be maintained, that means that the sync feature has to be a paid feature, which might make sense if we use the app for commercial cases, but it might not make so much sense if we are using Obsidian just to remember what we are supposed to do for the day. And here we can also say that Obsidian, like apps, are open source, so you can sync the data in Obsidian using any sync provider you trust. But I have to say that it's a very steep learning curve for someone who's just trying to take some notes. I suppose at this point you have to mention the Notion-like apps, where the collaboration feature is free to use for non-commercial cases. To that, I have to say that the collaboration or syncing works in the same way that syncing works in Obsidian by storing our data at a server. This does not solve the data ownership issue. We can also say that Notion does not have the steep learning curve of an open source software like Obsidian. But what about the people who already have the technical know how? Or what about the people who want to learn to modify their knowledge management app to have a more personalized experience? It seems like if we want on the go accessibility of our data, then we have to consent to have both our private thoughts as well as the thoughts we want to share stored far away. But as I have learned over the last 2+ years, is that this does not have to be the case. So what happened was that I was watching YouTube videos one day and I found this video by Jana Shaipova. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing her name and I apologize for that. But this YouTube video was my first introduction to an app called Anytype. After watching this video, I visited the Anytype website and when I could, I joined the Alpha program. My initial interest in Anytype was because Anytype had some very interesting answers to 4 questions I had about data ownership and the way we interact with the internet. First question was, if I use Anytype, can I store all my files, notes, and media locally in my device? The answer was yes. The second question I had was, so is there really such a way where I can sync these files and media that I have stored privately, locally in my devices, across all my devices, without storing the data in a faraway server somewhere? That is to say, is peer-to-peer, device-to-device local syncing of data really possible? The answer was surprisingly also yes. So the next question obviously was, how does this happen? So what happens is when we install the Anytype app and make an account, we are not asked to input our email address. What we get instead is a string of randomly generated words, which is called a key phrase or a recovery phrase. And we use this phrase to log into the Anytype app in every device we have. And that is to say, we can log into Anytype in every device we have because Anytype is available in every platform there is, in Android, Windows, in macOS, and iOS, everything. So when these devices are connected to the internet or Wi-Fi provider that we trust and the apps are open, Data within the app syncs between the devices without the need for the data to be stored at a server somewhere. This was wonderful and miraculous news for me. For those who are interested in the technical part of this process, this syncing happens mainly by the Anysync protocol, which was developed by the Anytype team. It implements systems like IPLD, DHs, multicast DNSs. I will put the link to everything I can think of about these systems in the description below. After my questions regarding storage side and data syncing processes were answered, the last question in my mind was about how does the Anytype team plan on remaining self-sufficient? The answer was very simple. It was through a hybrid licensing structure. That is to say, Anytype's Anysync and Anyblock protocols are licensed under MIT's open source initiative, which means that any individual who is using the app for personal and non-commercial cases is free to manipulate the app any way they want. But if you use the app to generate wealth, that is to say for commercial uses, then you have to get an additional source available licensing from Anytype's any association. In this case, the payment is like a membership fee to become part of the Anytype cooperative. This kind of pricing structure makes the most sense to me. The app is free for individual use, but is paid if the use is commercial. So these were the reasons that I first became interested in joining Anytype. But I stayed with Anytype because of the way that it implements its knowledge management system. Anytype works in spaces and objects. Every object has a type, and different types of objects relate to each other. These objects, types, and relations can also be grouped into sets and collections. There was a slight learning curve for me when I first started using the app, but it became very intuitive in about 2 to 3 days of use. I would like to discuss more about the philosophy behind Anytype's PKM structure as I wait for the exciting new features in the roadmap to become a reality, like collaboration, which is currently being worked on. Now it's August of 2023, and Anytype has entered its public beta phase. It is now in product hunt, and all of its code repository is open for viewing by everyone. And Anytype will slowly start accepting contribution from anyone who can contribute to the code. If you're also someone who thinks about data ownership, privacy, and the way we interact with the internet, then I'm sure you'll find Anytype interesting as well. Meanwhile, I'll keep sharing what I learn about it. I hope you have a nice day. See you later.